name is Sean Sherman. I'm enrolled with Oglala Lakota. I am the founder and director of Natives and also our brand new restaurant, Indígena by Owamni. We settled on the name Indígena, which to me really kind of helps us think about erasing borders and looking at indigenous cultures everywhere. We're creating a larger, more expansive menu. The purpose of this restaurant is to continue for us to kind of create a platform to showcase what's possible with modern indigenous foods, being able to push more food dollars towards the indigenous producers that we intentionally try to support.
My name is Lee Garman. I'm the culinary director for Indígena by Owamni and the nonprofit Natives. The thing that I would like people to learn coming here is how much food is around us and being able to push those boundaries on what food is a little bit. The first dish we have here is our huckleberry cured salmon with sea beans and huckleberry aioli. The huckleberries and the salmon are both from the Pacific Northwest. I was born in Everett, Washington. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. This salmon dish kind of represents a lot of that. I grew up, salmon fishing, picking huckleberries, salmon berries, native caught wild salmon. We do a 7-day dry age with maple sugar, salt, huckleberries. We saute our sea beans with garlic and a little bit of salt. Sea beans or sea asparagus are briny, almost like green beans, but much smaller. And then we finish that off with a foraged kind of green salad. Tart and tannic flavors from the huckleberry. The aioli's made out of duck eggs, so you kind of get that little bit of that gamey fattiness in there. Hints of the huckleberry and the maple sugar, a little bit of sweetness.
I was born and raised on Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, and Pine Ridge is the third largest reservation in the United States, and it's also been one of the poorest areas in the United States. And so when I was a kid growing up on the reservation, we spent most of our time outdoors. Like, we were living in a very segregated and colonial food system at that moment. And so a lot of this work just came from wanting to change that, to change the way what we knew about indigenous foods.
So our next dish is bison bone marrow. We kind of got the idea, Sean and I went to Copenhagen last year. We had a kind of lunch made by St. John's, and they had a beef bone marrow with toast and an herb salad. So we did a little play on that with bison bone marrow. We call it mojo de ajo, which is caramelized garlic. Yucca bread. It took us about 2 years to kind of figure out how to make bread without flour. Yucca, which is also cassava, baking soda, and yeast. The herb salad on top is mint and then other foraged herbs. You take the bone marrow out, you spread it on the bread with the garlic. The taste and texture, like a really, really even more rich butter with caramelized sugar and garlicky goodness. We do try to utilize almost exclusively native producers and purveyors of a lot of these things. The ones that we're the most proud of is native-wise. All of our bison, our wild rice, our maple, which we use in absolutely everything, comes from them. Our next dish is the glazed carrot, medium baby carrot. They're all heirloom varieties that are grown all over Minnesota. We came up with a walnut mole, and then we have puffed amaranth. We glaze the carrots with raspberry or a sour cherry glaze. So you get a lot of like sweet, earthy textures from the mole, a nice kind of tannic flavor from the glaze, and then a little crunch from the carrot itself. It's completely vegan, vegetarian friendly. For the walnut mole, when we make it, we pass it through a fine mesh strainer, and there's a ton of pulp that's left over. One of our new initiatives is zero waste. So we're actually dehydrating it and creating chips that garnish another dish that we have.
I also realized that a lot of our knowledge was taken from us because of boarding schools and the assimilation that happened to indigenous peoples at the turn of the century. So this work became, for me, not about myself, not about a chef trying to play around making beautiful plates, but using this whole situation as a platform, using food as a voice and a language to really teach people about this isn't the only way. This normalization of what happened throughout colonialism doesn't have to be the reality that we live in, and that we can change our perspectives and that we can look at the world through an indigenous lens. My grandparents' generation, they're that first generation of kids going through boarding schools, cutting their hair. There was information I was looking for that wasn't taught to us in schools growing up, that was already erased from most historical textbooks out there. Most of our food system was completely replaced with a colonial and segregated food system. When I got older, I realized that I didn't know that much about indigenous foods, and when that epiphany happened, I was actually living in Mexico. I was living in the state of Nayarit in Mexico on the Pacific Ocean. And I became very curious with the Huichol community who was nearby there. And I saw a lot of connections to their indigenous ways into what I experienced growing up in my own indigenous community in Lakota Nation. We had a lot of different kinds of animal and plant spirits and things like this. We had this really beautiful beadwork that we both did. We had very similar ceremonies using sweats. We had all these kind of commonalities.
Our next dish is kind of one of our greatest hits. It's our play on steak and fries. We've got a bison skirt steak that we've marinated, and we call it an asada marinade. Marinated with apple cider, tons of that caramelized garlic, onions, epazote, culantro, and then whatever foraged herbs that we can find. We mix that into an asada marinade and marinate that at least 48 hours. We also toss our yucca fries or cassava fries in that same marinade. You get obviously a lot of crispy, like great kind of crunch from the yucca fries. It's all coated in that asada marinade. So you also get a little bit of tanginess, a little bit of tannic, a little bit of sweet from the cider. And we also finish with an herb salad. It hits all those notes that you want for steak and fries.
Anybody working in restaurants or any large places, can be amazed at how much food waste gets tossed out. And again, like it's tough to go to backwards and to try to retrain ourselves to, what do we do with scraps of vegetables? What do we do with meat scraps? And coming up with creative ways to use everything. And like, what do you do with coffee waste? And we're dehydrating lots of things. We're turning things into powder. We're fermenting things. Indigenous food knowledge really has a key for us to be better humans in general, to have healthier food systems, to understand why it's important to protect our environment, and just to have a healthier, balanced diet in general. So even though we may be a little on the extreme side by cutting out colonial ingredients like beef, pork, chicken, dairy, wheat flour, cane sugar, it helps prove a point of how much more there is to explore.
My name is Noel Pedraza. I'm the beverage director here at Indígena. Be prepared to be surprised by the kind of cocktails that we can make without using these Eurocentric ingredients. The Res Dog, it was one of the first drinks that I came up with for the new menu. It is a vanilla chamomile honey syrup with spruce tip gin and a little bit of sumac tea. Probably more comparable to like a bee's knees. Light, refreshing, hits of vanilla, a little bit of herb from the chamomile, and the sumac tea adds like a little bit of brightness and acidity. It's the Minneapolis. It's one of our NA cocktails. It is a hawthorn, rose, vanilla, agave soda. It's garnished with a fresh forage flour. It tastes kind of like a light, herbaceous cream soda. The Skoden, we're focusing a lot on like reusing ingredients and just how to use things in kind of a different way and in different methods. That one is made with a berry chiang, which is like a lightly fermented berry syrup, just made with maple sugar and mixed berries. The flavors are going to be rotating over the next couple of months. That one is, fermented for about 4 to 5 days, and then sumac tea in there as well with our well tequila baracara, served on a big rock. It's a slow sipper. It's delicious.
I'm just trying to make things better than what I grew up with on a reservation in a place like Pine Ridge, South Dakota. So kids can start to have access to their own indigenous foods in their own language. Kids have an understanding of how these foods will make you feel compared to eating at a gas station or a fast food place. And the restaurant's just a piece of the puzzle, because this is just creating a massive amount of jobs, building future leaders, moving food dollars intentionally. So there's people all over the globe that we've been connecting to on this level of just like looking at the world through a decolonized lens, of pushing back against what's been normalized through colonization and working towards a better future that's more centered on humanity.